My husband said, "I made a few changes, you'll thank me later." He said it lightly, almost as if it were a joke, while laughter and the clinking of glasses filled the dining room. His family leaned closer, waiting for the next line. He smiled, proud of himself, enjoying the attention. "I just moved some things around," he added. 2 million sitting idle didn't make sense. "I put it somewhere it can grow." His mother's eyes sparkled. "That's my boy. Always thinking ahead." His father chuckled. "Good instincts, Henry. That's how families build real legacies." Their voices blended into the background hum of approval, the kind that had followed Henry since the day I met him. I smiled politely, but my chest felt tight. Something about his tone, confident, rehearsed, didn't sit right. Because the money he was talking about wasn't his to move. It was mine. That legacy came from my late father's company, his life's work destroyed years ago by greed and deception. The settlement that followed had been placed under strict protection, accessible only through legal authorization. My attorney once told me, "No one can touch it without your signature, Claire." And yet here Henry was speaking as if he'd just rearranged furniture. The smell of roasted herbs filled the room, warm and inviting, but all I could taste was the metallic hint of dread. My phone buzzed under the table. I glanced at the screen, activity alert, account accessed. I didn't open it. I couldn't. The doorbell rang. The sound sliced through the laughter, silencing every conversation at once. Henry frowned and stood. "Probably a delivery," he said, pushing back his chair. The room watched him disappear down the hall. Then came the voices, steady, firm, unmistakably official. "Federal investigators. We need a moment of your time." Every eye turned toward the entryway. The warmth in the room drained away, replaced by something cold and electric. Eleanor gasped. Henry's smile froze. "There must be some mistake," he said, but his voice trembled. One of the agents, a woman with calm eyes and a badge clipped to her coat, stepped forward. "Mr. Walker, we have questions regarding unauthorized transfers tied to restricted assets. We'll need your cooperation." He looked at me just for a second. That's all it took. The color left his face. "Claire," he whispered, "don't say anything. I can fix this." But it was too late. The agents spoke quietly, their movements efficient and polite, as if this were something they did every day. Henry's family watched in disbelief, their son, their pride, being led away toward the waiting cars outside. When the front door closed, silence filled every corner of the house. Hours later, I sat alone at the table, surrounded by the remnants of dinner. The candles burned low, the wine glasses half empty, the air still heavy with shock. My phone buzzed again, account frozen under review. I rose slowly and walked into Henry's office. The faint smell of his cologne lingered. Papers were arranged in perfect order except for one folder sitting slightly out of place. Its label read Legacy Records. Inside, I found pages covered in signatures, mine, but not quite. Every curve of my handwriting had been copied, but the pressure was wrong. Too deliberate, too precise. And beside each line was another name, Vivian Langford. Her face flashed in my mind, the polished businesswoman Henry admired, the one who'd once told me at a charity gala. In families like ours, control is the real inheritance. I hadn't understood what she meant until now. I gathered the documents, placed them in a folder, and hid them beneath the floorboard in our bedroom closet. Then I opened my laptop, ready to email my attorney. Before I could type a single word, a new message appeared on the screen. No sender. No subject. Only one line. "If you want the truth, don't trust the Bureau." A file began to download automatically. Legacy 001. Zip. My breath caught. I didn't open it. Not yet. Outside, the wind brushed against the windows, whispering through the dark like a warning. The reflection of the dining room shimmered faintly on the glass, empty chairs, untouched plates. A celebration turned into a secret crime scene. I stood there for a long time, staring into that reflection. Henry had told me I'd thank him later. But as I looked at what was left of our Thanksgiving night, I realized something. He had no idea what gratitude would look like, not when it came wrapped in justice. The morning after the agents took Henry felt unnaturally quiet. Even the house seemed unsure what to do with the silence. The sunlight crept across the floor like it was afraid to enter. I sat at the kitchen table, still wearing last night's clothes, watching steam rise from a cup of untouched coffee. Eleanor had called 5 times before sunrise. I let every call go to voicemail. The messages were all the same: please, excuses, demands. Claire, they said, it's a misunderstanding. Claire, the lawyers are handling it. Claire, for God's sake, think about the family's reputation. Reputation. That word again. It had been the wallpaper of my marriage, thin, decorative, and impossible to peel off. I turned my phone face down. Outside, the sky was the dull gray of uncertainty. My mind replayed the night before, the agent's calm efficiency, the way Henry looked at me like I had betrayed him. But I hadn't done anything. I had been loyal, quiet, and patient. Too patient. The front door opened without a knock. Eleanor stood there, wrapped in her mink coat, eyes sharp, despite the faint tremor in her hands. Claire, she said softly, we need to talk. I didn't move. You should have called first. This isn't a time for formality. She set her purse on the counter, glancing around as if expecting to find the mess of a crime scene. The kitchen was spotless, almost unnaturally so. You know Henry didn't mean any harm. He's always been impulsive. Impulsive, I asked quietly. He forged my signature. He's under investigation. Eleanor sighed, the sound elegant and heavy. Don't dramatize. These things can be fixed if we handle them correctly. Vivian is already speaking with her contacts. Vivian. The name landed like a cold coin in my stomach. She shouldn't be involved, I said. She is involved, Eleanor replied simply. Vivian has been part of our family's business circle for decades. She knows how to protect what matters. I stood, my pulse quickening. You mean protect you? Her smile didn't falter. I mean protect us. The Walkers don't survive scandals, Claire. We manage them. She reached into her bag and placed a slim envelope on the table. You'll sign this. It's a statement just to clarify that you authorize certain transactions. It will calm the situation before it grows. I stared at the envelope, and if I don't, her hand froze on the purse clasp. Then Henry's life becomes very complicated. And yours, well, collateral damage isn't pleasant. There it was. The threat wrapped in pearls and perfume. I'm not signing anything, I said. Eleanor tilted her head, almost pitying. You always were stubborn. But Vivian told me you'd come around. You're too intelligent not to. She turned and left as quietly as she'd arrived, her perfume lingering like smoke. When the door closed, I sank back into the chair and stared at the envelope. The handwriting on it was unmistakably Vivian's precise, flawless, confident. That night I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Henry's face under the flashing lights. By dawn, I made a decision. I wasn't going to wait for them to write my story. I called my attorney, Daniel Harris, and met him in his downtown office. The city was already alive, indifferent to everything unraveling inside me. Daniel's assistant offered me coffee, but I declined. My hands were too restless to hold a cup. You're right not to sign anything, Daniel said after skimming the papers Eleanor had left. This isn't a clarification, it's an admission. They're trying to make it look like you authorized Henry's actions retroactively. So Vivian's behind it. She's clever, Daniel said carefully. Her company, Langford Holdings, manages several offshore accounts. If Henry's transfers went through her channels, she'll try to bury the evidence. You need to be cautious. Cautious. The word sounded almost funny now. What about the investigation, I asked. The bureau agent last night, she said my name was on the documents. Daniel hesitated. That's true. But I checked the case notes this morning. Someone accessed your trust records from an external terminal 2 weeks ago. Whoever did it used your clearance ID. My clearance? My voice caught. That's impossible. I haven't logged into that system in months. He nodded grimly. Then someone had help. Outside the window, the city blurred rain against glass horns in the distance, everything moving too fast to see clearly. Can you trace it, I asked. I can try, he said. But if Vivian's network is involved, she'll cover her tracks. Still, there might be a way. He slid a flash drive across the desk. This holds everything we can recover from your account activity before it was frozen. Keep it safe, and whatever you do, don't upload it to any personal device. I slipped it into my coat pocket, feeling its small weight like a secret heartbeat. By the time I got home, dusk had settled. The house felt colder than before, hollow in a way I couldn't name. I poured a glass of water, sat at Henry's desk, and powered up his computer. His login was simple. He'd never believed I'd look. The screen blinked to life, rows of emails appearing like ghosts. Most were business updates, but one caught my eye. The sender's name was hidden behind a string of letters and numbers, but the subject line was clear: Legacy Protocol. I opened it. Inside was a single sentence: trust no one who shares your bloodline. A second later, the message disappeared, vanished completely as if it had never existed. I sat back, heart pounding. The cursor blinked on an empty screen. Then I noticed something else, an open document saved on the desktop. It was a draft email from Henry to Vivian. It's done. She won't find out until the audit. After that, we'll move everything before they lock the system. You said this would fix everything. I stared at those words until my eyes burned. Henry hadn't just stolen from me, he had trusted someone else more than he trusted his wife. The sound of my phone vibrating broke the silence. A new message appeared from an unknown number. If you want proof, meet me tomorrow at 8 p.m. The Glass House Cafe. No name. No signature. The Glass House was a small restaurant near the river, quiet, discreet. The kind of place where secrets preferred to stay unspoken. I looked back at Henry's screen one more time, then shut it down. The storm had passed for now, but the air still carried its electricity. Something bigger was unfolding, and every instinct I had told me I was already standing in the middle of it. Outside, thunder rolled over the city, low and distant. I took the flash drive from my pocket and placed it beside the laptop. Whatever truth was waiting at that cafe tomorrow night, I knew one thing for certain. The silence in this house was only the beginning. The Glass House Cafe sat near the edge of the river, half hidden behind a line of bare trees. Its windows glowed against the November fog, reflecting the soft light of the street lamps. I arrived 10 minutes early, scanning each face inside as the wind pushed through the door behind me. The smell of roasted coffee beans and rain greeted me like something familiar, but tonight nothing felt familiar anymore. I chose a seat by the window. My hands trembled as I stirred my tea, watching the steam twist upward like secrets leaving a body. Every time the door opened, I looked up, half expecting to see Henry, half fearing it. But when the stranger walked in, I knew immediately he was the one who had texted me. He wore a dark overcoat collar turned up against the chill, his movements deliberate, careful. He looked like someone used to watching before speaking. He paused at the counter, ordered black coffee, then crossed the room and stopped at my table. Claire Walker. His voice was quiet, precise, but it carried weight. I nodded. He slid into the seat opposite me, placing a small folder on the table. My name's Michael Reed. I work with financial compliance, the private sector, not federal. He met my eyes. I'm not here to arrest you. That's comforting, I said softly, though my voice betrayed my unease. He smiled barely. I'd imagine you've had enough badges lately. He tapped the folder. What I have to show you isn't official, but it's real. It's about your husband and Vivian Langford. The sound of her name pulled all the air out of the room. He opened the folder and turned it toward me. Inside were photocopies of documents, wire authorizations, account numbers, and something else, scanned pages of internal memos with Vivian's signature. This, he said, pointing to the top sheet, is the transfer request from your trust. It originated from your home network. The authorization code used was your personal clearance. I didn't authorize any of this, I said quickly. I know, he replied. That's why I'm here. He slid another document toward me. This one is more interesting. Vivian's company, Langford Holdings, created something called the Legacy Protocol about a year ago. A private investment structure that channels dormant assets through offshore trusts. It's marketed as legal and it's a shell game. Your husband helped her test it. I stared at the papers, the ink bleeding slightly from the copier. Why would Henry get involved in something like this? Reed's expression darkened. Because she promised him access to your locked funds. Vivian needed someone with internal access to test her system. Henry was perfect, ambitious, trusted, and married to you. The truth hit me with quiet violence. I leaned back, my breath shallow. Reed continued. When he transferred the money, it didn't just move, it vanished into a loop of private ledgers spread across 6 countries. Legally, it doesn't exist anymore. But Vivian underestimated how visible that much movement would be. The Bureau noticed. That's why they came for him. I pressed a hand to my temple. And now she'll try to make me take the blame. Exactly. He closed the folder and pushed it toward me. You're the fall person. But it's not over yet. He looked around the cafe before lowering his voice. There's a backup drive. Vivian keeps copies of every transaction under a coded alias. If we find it, we can prove she orchestrated this. I can help you get it. I studied him for a long moment. Why help me? You said you're not with the Bureau. He hesitated, then said, because I used to work for her. The words hung between us like smoke. She ruined my career, he added. And my family. You're not the first person she's done this to, but you can be the last. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Outside, a streetcar passed, its lights sliding across the window like moving shadows. Finally, I said, where do we start? He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small flash drive. This is a fragment of her network. I managed to extract it before I left her company. It includes a location and address she uses as a front office in Midtown. It's listed under an art foundation, but it's where she keeps her encrypted servers. Servers, records, files, digital ledgers, everything she doesn't want seen. He paused. We'll need access before she wipes them. And trust me, once she realizes Henry's been arrested, she'll start covering tracks. I looked down at the drive in his hand. Why give this to me? Because you're the only one with legal right to the original funds, he said. If anyone can demand access to her archives, it's you. The waitress passed by, refilling cups, and the moment broke. I reached for the flash drive and slipped it into my purse. If this is real, then she's not just laundering money, she's rewriting ownership. Reed nodded. And she's using people like Henry to do it. The moment she's done, they become liabilities. I exhaled slowly, staring at the condensation on my cup. Then Henry's not the only one in danger. No, Reed said. You're next. I left the cafe under the drizzle, my thoughts a tangled web of anger and disbelief. The city lights shimmered across the wet pavement. My reflection in the glass storefronts looked like someone else, a woman half ghost, half fighter. When I got home, the answering machine blinked with messages, Eleanor again, her voice sharper this time. Claire, call me back. Vivian is furious. You're making this worse for everyone. I deleted every message. Then I turned off all the lights except the one in Henry's office. His desk was still neat, the chair slightly turned as if he'd just stepped out for air. I plugged Reed's flash drive into the computer. A folder opened automatically. Project Legacy. Inside were files labeled with dates, account initials, and 3 words that made my heart stop: Walker Trust Assets. Each document was signed digitally by Vivian Langford, and everyone had a matching timestamp 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. I opened one file and saw something I hadn't expected: scanned letters from Vivian to Eleanor. The subject line read, Family Alignment. The letters were filled with polite manipulation discussions about Henry's potential references to consolidating wealth within the bloodline. Vivian had written, Claire's holdings can stabilize the family's legacy. Once transferred, control should remain with those capable of managing long-term assets, people like you and Henry. My chest tightened. Eleanor knew. She had known the entire time. I closed the laptop, shaking. The room felt too small, too still. The phone rang again. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mrs. Walker. The voice was male, firm, professional. This is Agent Catherine Reeves from the Financial Crimes Division. We need to schedule a follow-up interview. There have been new developments. I swallowed. Is Henry... Okay. A pause. He's cooperating. But there are inconsistencies in his statement. He mentioned someone named Vivian Langford and you. Me. Yes, Reeves said. He claims you were aware of the transfers. The room spun. That's a lie. I figured, she replied calmly. But if you want to clear your name, you'll need to meet with us. And Mrs. Walker, don't discuss this call with anyone, especially Mrs. Langford. The line went dead. I stood there for a long moment, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator, the faint patter of rain against the windows. My pulse thudded in my ears. They were circling. Vivian, Eleanor, the bureau, each pulling strings in a game I hadn't agreed to play. But something inside me hardened. I picked up the flash drive again, feeling its small metallic weight. If Vivian thought I would stay silent, she was wrong. By morning, I would no longer be the woman sitting at the edge of someone else's decisions. By morning, I would start fighting back. By the time dawn broke, I had already packed a small bag and left the house. Sleep hadn't come. It had hovered just beyond reach, chased away by too many voices, Henry's protests, Eleanor's threats, Vivian's calm assurances echoing from memory. I drove without a destination at first, just to feel the distance growing between me and that house full of ghosts. The city woke slowly around me. Delivery trucks, wet streets, a pale light that made everything look washed out. My phone vibrated twice before I checked it. 2 messages from unknown numbers, both with the same attachment name, Mirror Ledger PDF. I didn't open them, not yet. Instead, I parked near the old botanical gardens. They were closed for the season, the gates locked. But from the car, I could still see the empty glass dome catching the morning sun. The reflection reminded me of the Glasshouse Cafe from the night before, and of Reed's warning, "You're next." I opened the laptop, connected the flash drive, and searched the new messages for clues. The attachments were duplicates of one another, each showing a trail of transfers tied to something called mirror accounts. The last entry was dated 3 days ago. The sender's initials were V.L. Vivian Langford. I didn't know why she would send me anything herself unless she wanted me to see it. I called Daniel Harris, my attorney. I received some new files. I said, my voice steady but low. They look like financial records, Vivian's, I think. Don't open them, he said immediately. They could be a trap. Metadata can tie your device to a transaction chain. But if she's reaching out, it means she's nervous. Or confident enough to bait you. I closed the laptop. Then I'll take the bait, I said softly. That afternoon, I drove downtown to Langford Holdings. The building rose like a blade of glass among the older brick towers, its name etched in steel near the entrance. Inside, the lobby gleamed with the quiet arrogance of money-white marble floors, black glass walls, an abstract sculpture that looked like a twisting helix of mirrors. At the reception desk, a woman smiled too brightly. "Do you have an appointment?" "Yes," I said. "With Vivian Langford." Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. "Your name, Claire Walker." Something flickered across her face, a brief tightening around the eyes. "I'm not sure Ms. Langford is available today." "She will be," I said. "Tell her it's about the legacy protocol." The words worked like code. 10 minutes later, I was led to the elevator by a security guard in a tailored suit. Vivian's office was on the top floor, wide windows overlooking the river, the sky turning silver above it. She stood by her desk when I entered, wearing a cream suit and a calm, unbothered expression, like a woman hosting a tea party instead of an ambush. "Claire," she said warmly, "I was wondering when you'd come." "I'm sure you were." She gestured toward a chair. "Please sit." I didn't. "You sent me something this morning." "Mirror Ledger." Her smile deepened slightly. "Ah, so you did open it." "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." She walked to the window, her heels silent on the carpet. "I wanted you to understand, Claire. None of this was personal. Henry's mistake put everything at risk." I tried to contain it. "You call forging my signature containment," she turned, meeting my gaze without flinching. "I call it survival. You inherited more than money, you inherited leverage. The kind of power that attracts attention, some of it dangerous. The legacy protocol wasn't theft. It was protection. Protection from what Vivian's tone softened, almost pitying. From people who would tear your father's legacy apart again. From the Bureau. From you. The air between us grew sharp. You used my husband. I gave him purpose, she said simply. Men like Henry need to feel indispensable. You, on the other hand, were never meant to see the machinery. Her words landed like glass breaking. Where's the money, Vivian? She smiled again. Everywhere and nowhere. That's what makes it safe. I stepped closer. You think you're untouchable, but I've seen your ledgers, your emails. There's enough here to destroy you. She tilted her head, studying me like a scientist observing a reaction. Destroy me and you destroy yourself. The Bureau already believes you're involved. The moment they open those files, your name is on every transaction. You're their perfect scapegoat. My pulse thudded. You planned that. I planned for every possibility, she said, including this conversation. You think you came here for answers, but you came because I let you. Because I wanted you to see what power actually looks like. I took a slow breath. And what does it look like, control, she said. It looks like control. For a long time, neither of us moved. The city hummed faintly below cars sliding through wet streets, lives continuing as ours froze in this glass cage of a room. Finally, Vivian broke the silence. Go home, Claire. There's nothing left to fight for. The Bureau will finish what Henry started, and the Walkers will move on. It's better if you don't resist. I turned toward the door. You've made one mistake, I said quietly. Her eyebrow lifted. And what's that? You think I'm alone. Then I walked out before she could answer. I called Reed from the parking garage, my voice shaking but steady. She's orchestrating everything. She's already preparing for her escape. I know, he said. She's been moving data since sunrise, but we have a window her backup servers replicate every 24 hours. If we can get in before the sync, we can copy the originals. How I've got someone inside. A systems analyst named Naomi. She's worked for Langford for 3 years. She wants out. When do we meet her tonight? Midnight. She'll come to you. I hung up the line, clicking into silence. Outside, the evening light dimmed, painting the skyline in copper and shadow. I drove home through a blur of traffic and thoughts, every red light feeling longer than the last. When I finally turned onto my street, I saw Eleanor's car parked outside my house. I didn't stop. I circled the block, waited until she left, then slipped into the alley and entered through the back door. The house was dark except for a faint glow from Henry's office. The computer was on. I stepped closer. The screen showed an open video message, a frozen frame of Henry filmed from some sterile room with gray walls. I clicked play. Claire, his voice began low and tired. If you're watching this, it means things didn't go the way Vivian promised. I thought I was fixing something. I didn't know what she was really doing. I'm sorry. He paused, eyes flicking toward the door off-screen, then back to the camera. There's a file, hidden inside the drive she gave me. It's called Air Key. Find it before she does. The video cut out abruptly. I stood there frozen. Then the screen flickered again, just for a second, white noise. Then static, and a final line of text appeared across the monitor. You're running out of time. The lights in the house went out all at once. I didn't breathe. Somewhere outside, a car engine started, then faded into the night. I grabbed my phone, the flash drive, and the keys, and walked into the dark without looking back. The mirror games were over. Now it was survival. Rain streaked the windshield as I pulled onto the highway. The wipers moved back and forth in a steady rhythm, but they couldn't clear the fog clouding my thoughts. Henry's message looped in my mind, his voice quieter than I remembered, trembling with something I couldn't name. Guilt, fear, love. Maybe all three. The flash drive lay on the passenger seat beside me, its small red light blinking faintly in the dark. Somewhere inside, it was Air Key, the file Henry said could expose everything. But the question was, who else knew about it? I drove for an hour before pulling into a gas station off Route 9. The rain had slowed to a mist, and the fluorescent lights above the pumps hummed softly. I parked behind the convenience store out of sight and took out my laptop. The air smelled of wet asphalt and gasoline. I connected the flash drive, fingers trembling slightly. A folder appeared on the screen, Archive Backup. Inside were dozens of subfolders, numbers, letters, random strings. I typed AirKey into the search bar. Nothing. I tried again, this time using lowercase then uppercase. Still nothing. Then I remembered something Henry used to say whenever we argued about passwords or encryption. Everything worth protecting has a story. I opened a blank notepad file and started listing everything personal he might have used: birthdays, dates, names. Then one word came to me like a whisper from the past: Willowbrook. The place where we'd met 15 years ago during a company retreat. I typed it into the search bar. The screen flickered once, then a hidden folder appeared: Willowbrook Access. Inside was a single video file. No name, no timestamp, just one icon. I clicked play. The screen filled with static, then cleared to reveal Henry sitting in what looked like an office, gray walls, fluorescent light flickering overhead. His suit jacket was gone, his hair disheveled. His hands rested flat on a metal table. "Claire," he said, looking directly into the camera, "if you're watching this, I didn't get to tell you everything." My throat tightened. "I know you don't believe me," he continued, "but Vivian wasn't just stealing from us. She was stealing from everyone. The legacy protocol wasn't about money, it was about data, ownership records, inheritance lines, entire family trusts. She's rewriting who owns what." He swallowed, glancing toward the corner of the frame like someone was watching. "She used my clearance, your trust credentials, even your father's estate codes. And she's not working alone. Eleanor knows she's part of it." I froze. "She said it was for the family," Henry went on, his voice cracking. "Said it would restore what your father lost after the lawsuits. But she didn't tell me the cost. Vivian promised it would all disappear off the radar, no taxes, no oversight. She didn't say it meant the Bureau would come after us." He took a deep breath. "The file you're looking for, AirKey, isn't just evidence. It's the reset code. It can undo every transaction she's made. But it only works if both of us authorize it. That's why she's keeping me close." He leaned forward. "Claire, if you can hear me, don't trust Eleanor. Don't trust anyone who says they can fix this. If something happens to me, find Reed. He knows the rest." A loud bang echoed from somewhere off screen. Henry's head jerked toward the door. His eyes widened. "I have to go," he said quickly. "They're here. Keep the file safe. And Claire." The video was cut to black. I sat motionless, staring at the screen long after it ended. The air inside the car felt heavy. The rain had stopped, but thunder rolled in the distance like a warning. Then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number: "He shouldn't have told you. Meet me at the docks by midnight if you want to live long enough to use that file." No signature, no location, just the docks. I closed the laptop and stared out at the fog. My reflection in the window looked like a stranger, pale, determined, terrified. The dock sat on the far edge of the city, an industrial stretch of rusting cranes and warehouses. I parked near a chain-link fence and followed the sound of waves slapping against wood. The river smelled of oil and metal. A single figure stood near the end of the pier, back-turned. A woman-tall coat fluttering in the wind. "Vivian," I said. She turned slowly, her face half lit by the dock lights. "I see you found Henry's message." I tightened my grip on the flash drive in my pocket. "You sent the text." "I did," she said simply. "I assumed you'd be smart enough to come alone." "I'm done playing your games." Vivian smiled faintly. "This isn't a game, Claire. You have something that doesn't belong to you." "It belonged to my father," I shot back. "And now it belongs to no one," she replied. "That's the beauty of it. Clean slates, no paper trails. The world keeps spinning while the smart ones start over." She stepped closer, her heels echoing on the wood. "Give me the drive. I'll make sure your name disappears from the Bureau's case file. You'll walk away free. I laughed a short, bitter sound. You think I believed that Vivian's expression hardened? Believe whatever you want, but the Bureau doesn't protect people like you. You're a headline waiting to happen. I'm your only way out. Behind her, headlights flared briefly at the edge of the pier. A car door opened. I glimpsed a silhouette, broad shoulders, moving fast. Reed. Vivian noticed him at the same moment I did. Her eyes narrowed. You brought help. You brought a knife, I said, nodding at the flash of silver in her hand. For a second, no one moved. The wind howled through the empty docks, carrying the smell of rain and rust. Then Reed's voice cut through the noise. Step away from her, Vivian. She turned slowly, the knife lowering, but not disappearing. You again, she said, still pretending to play hero. Just cleaning up what I helped create, he replied. Vivian's smile was almost tender. You were always sentimental. Give me the file, Reed said. I don't have it, she said, eyes flicking toward me. I felt the flash drive burning against my palm inside my coat pocket. Vivian noticed the movement. Of course, she whispered. She has it. Before either of us could react, she lunged. Reed grabbed her arm, twisting it sharply, and the knife clattered to the ground. She kicked free, stumbling backward toward the edge of the pier. Vivian, stop, I shouted. This won't fix anything. Her eyes met mine, and for the first time I saw something like fear behind them. You don't understand, she said. If you use that file, you'll bring them back. Who? I demanded. She opened her mouth to answer, but the wooden plank beneath her heel cracked. She slipped, arms flailing, and then she was gone, vanished into the dark water below. I ran to the edge, but there was nothing, just ripples spreading across the river. Reed joined me, breathing hard. She's gone. I stared into the water. No, I whispered. Vivian Langford doesn't drown that easily. He looked at me then, at the drive still clutched in my hand. Whatever's on that file, he said, it's bigger than both of us. I nodded slowly. Then we'd better find out what it really does. The wind picked up again, colder now. Somewhere out on the river, something shifted in the shadows like movement under the surface. Reed glanced at the water, then back at me. Let's go, before anyone else decides to show up. As we walked back toward the car, thunder cracked above us. I didn't look back, because deep down I already knew Vivian wasn't finished. She was just changing the rules. By the time we reached Reed's safe house on the outskirts of the city, the storm had turned violent. Rain hammered against the roof like 1,000 small fists. The headlights of passing cars flashed briefly through the blinds, slicing the darkness in rhythmic bursts. Reed dropped his soaked jacket onto a chair and motioned for me to follow him into a small room cluttered with computer equipment. Screens covered one wall, casting the place in cold blue light. Sit, he said, handing me a towel. Let's see what she was willing to drown over. I sat across from him, placing the flash drive on the desk like it was something alive. Its tiny red light pulsed faintly. He connected it to his system and began typing. The sound of keys filled the room. Lines of code flashed across the monitor's, streams of data that looked like chaos to me but made sense to him. After a few minutes, he frowned. It's encrypted in layers. Every folder unlocks another one like a set of Russian dolls. Can you break it? He hesitated. I can try, but there's a signature buried inside the code, something I haven't seen since I worked for her. It's called the inheritance lock. What does it do? It ties access to a specific biometric pattern, fingerprint, retina, voice. Vivian built it to ensure no one could use her data without her. Except she's gone, I said quietly. Reed looked up. That's what you think. Before I could ask what he meant, the screen flickered. A message appeared in the center, written in clean white letters. You're late, Claire. The text shifted like someone was typing live. You shouldn't have trusted him. My stomach dropped. I had spent my life believing in predictable rules in a world that rewarded loyalty and patience. Now even the laws of cause and effect felt like a lie. Vivian was not just one step ahead. She was the architect of the entire game, and I was just a pawn she'd let play a few moves. My fear turned into a cold, hard resolve. I wouldn't be a pawn anymore. I'd be the one who overturned the board. Reed's eyes darted across the code. She's in the system. How she must have built a remote failsafe, something that activates when the drive connects to an unknown network. Damn it, she's been watching this whole time. The lights flickered once, then the screens went black. Silence. Then a single audio file began to play through the speakers. Vivian's voice, calm and unnervingly close. "You really thought it would be that easy," she said. "I told you not to fight Claire. But here you are, making a mess out of everything I built. You should have listened." I stepped back. "Is this live?" "No," Reed said, jaw tight. "It's pre-recorded." But she left it for a reason. The message continued. "If you're hearing this, you've already opened the file. That means the Bureau will be at your door soon. You can give them the drive or you can finish what your father started." My pulse stopped. "What did she say?" Reed asked. "She mentioned my father." Vivian's voice softened, almost intimate. "He understood the truth about legacy, about power that outlives its owners. You were never supposed to inherit the money, Claire. You were meant to inherit the system." The file ended with a faint click followed by static. I turned to Reed. "She knew my father." He nodded slowly. "Vivian used to work for him years before he died. That's how she learned about the trust. She must have kept his research." "What research?" "The inheritance program," Reed said. "Your father designed a digital ledger that could hide assets across borders decades ahead of its time. He called it the future of family wealth management. Vivian called it the perfect weapon." The rain outside grew heavier, blurring the sound of the world beyond the walls. I sank into the chair, my heart pounding. So that's what the legacy protocol really is, my father's system stolen and rebranded. Reed nodded grimly. "And now you're the last person who can unlock it." I rubbed my temples, feeling the edges of exhaustion creep in. Then, "What's the air key?" Reed turned one of the monitors back on manually. "A reset code, like Henry said. If we trigger it, it wipes every record Vivian ever manipulated. But it also deletes the original structure, your father's design, your trust, everything. So I'd lose it all." "Yes," he said. "But so would she." The weight of the choice settled over us. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and went pale. "What?" "She's still alive." He showed me the message, an anonymous alert from one of his old contacts in the Bureau. "Langford sighted at Port Huron crossing, intercepting data shipment, classified. She's trying to move it," he said. "All of it, offshore." "When tonight?" I stood grabbing my coat. "Then we're going after her." Reed shook his head. "You don't understand. If she reaches that port, she disappears for good. We'll need access to the Bureau's grid to track her convoy. That means calling someone inside." Who?" He hesitated. "Agent Reeves." I froze. "The one investigating me." "She's not your enemy, Claire. If anything, she's the only one who believes there's more to this than simple fraud. But she won't help unless she sees proof." I looked at the flash drive. "Then we give her the message." Reed nodded. "Half of it, we keep the rest." The storm had calmed by the time we reached the Bureau's downtown field office. The city lights blurred through the wet glass of the car window. We parked a block away and walked under the awning, both of us soaked but determined. Inside the lobby was sterile white walls, gray carpet, a receptionist who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. "Agent Reeves," I said, flashing the ID I still had from my clearance days. "Tell her it's about the Langford case." 10 minutes later, Reeves appeared. She was tall, dark-haired, sharp-eyed, the kind of woman who could slice through a lie just by blinking. "Mrs. Walker," she said, cool but not unfriendly. "You've been busy." I didn't have a choice. Her gaze shifted to Reed. "And you are Michael Reed, former employee of Langford Holdings." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Former, huh? That's convenient." "We don't have time for skepticism," I said. "Vivian Langford's alive. She's moving the data across the border tonight." Reeves folded her arms. "That's a big claim." I handed her a portable drive. "There's a recording. Henry's confession and part of Vivian's message. It proves she's using my father's system. Reeves plugged the drive into her tablet. The video played silently, her eyes scanning every frame. When it ended, she exhaled slowly. Jesus, she murmured. This isn't just fraud. It's asset rewriting. She's manipulating federal registries. So you believe me? I asked. Reeves closed the tablet. I believe you're both in more danger than you realize. She looked at Reed. And you're coming with me. You're the only one who can decrypt her system. He nodded. If we can reach her convoy before it crosses the state line, we can stop the transfer. Reeves turned to me. And you, Mrs. Walker, you stay here. I met her gaze. No, this isn't negotiable. I stepped forward, my voice low but steady. She used my name. My husband. My father's work. I've been running for weeks while everyone else played their game. This ends with me. Reeves studied me for a moment, then gave a small nod. Fine, but you follow my lead. She turned toward the exit, her badge glinting in the light. We leave in 10 minutes. As she walked away, Reed glanced at me. Are you sure you're ready for this? I looked down at the flash drive still in my hand, the one piece of proof, the one weapon we had left. I stopped being ready a long time ago, I said. Now I'm just done being silent. Outside, thunder rumbled again, low and distant. Somewhere on the highway to the border, Vivian Langford was already in motion, and for the first time since it all began, so was I. The night highway stretched ahead like a blade wet, gleaming endless. Our convoy of 3 black SUVs moved in silence, headlights slicing through fog. Agent Reeves drove the lead vehicle, her focus absolute. I sat beside her, the flash drive clenched tight in my palm like a talisman. Reed sat behind us, his laptop open, fingers flying across the keyboard as streams of encrypted data raced across the screen. She's headed for Port Huron, he said, eyes fixed on the code. Her system's already initiating transfer. Once she crosses, the data will be mirrored offshore. We'll lose jurisdiction. Reeves didn't look away from the road. Then we stop her before she crosses. I watched the raindrops streak the windshield, each one catching the reflection of the city lights we were leaving behind. It struck me how far I'd come from the woman who once worried about dinner parties and performance reviews. Now I was part of a federal pursuit to stop a woman who had rewritten my life in binary code. The radio crackled. A voice came through, gravelly urgent. Unit 3 to command, Langford's convoy. Just exited I-94. 2 SUVs black tinted. Possible decoys. Reeves reached for the mic. Command, this is Unit 1. We have visual confirmation. Proceed to intercept route Foxtrot. Over. She turned to Reed. Can you trace her data transfer from here? I can slow it, he said. Don't stop it without direct access. Then slow it. He started typing again, muttering under his breath. I'm sending false pings into her system, making her think she's being hacked from multiple sources. It should buy us 5, maybe 10 minutes. That's all we need, Reeves said. 15 minutes later, we reached the bridge. The St. Clair River gleamed darkly below the Canadian lights shimmering across the water. Border control booths stood ahead, their barriers rising and lowering in slow rhythm. Beyond them, Vivian's future or her escape waited. There, Reed said suddenly. 3rd lane from the right. Black Escalade-tinted windows. It's her. Reeves accelerated. Hold on. The tires screeched as we cut across lanes, sirens flaring to life. The Escalade jolted forward, smashing through the barricade. Metal groaned, lights shattered. 2 agents shouted into radios as Reeves pressed harder on the gas. She's not stopping, she said. Reed cursed under his breath. She just triggered the final sequence. The data's uploading from a mobile node inside her car. Then we end this here. The Escalade swerved sharply, fishtailing across the wet pavement before correcting itself. The bridge ahead, narrowed steel girders arched overhead like a rib cage enclosing us in echoing thunder. Reeves pulled alongside our vehicle, inches away from hers. Through the tinted glass, I caught a flash of Vivian's face, calm, focused, her hands steady on the wheel. She didn't look scared. She looked unstoppable. Vivian, I shouted, though she couldn't hear me. Stop this. As if she sensed it, her gaze flicked toward me for one fleeting second. Our eyes met through layers of glass and rain. Then she smiled. A second later, her SUV veered left, slamming against ours. Metal screamed. The world spun sideways as Reeves fought to keep control. Sparks flew across the bridge railings. "Hold on," she yelled. The airbags exploded in white light. The car skidded, stopped inches from the guardrail. Steam hissed from the hood. I gasped for breath, the air thick with the smell of rubber and metal. Reeves was already unbuckling. "Stay here," she said, kicking open her door. Reed was bleeding from a cut on his temple but conscious. "She's still on the bridge," he said. "The data transfer's at 92%. I looked out through the cracked windshield. Vivian's SUV had come to rest halfway up the incline, one wheel hanging over the edge. Her driver's door was open. She was gone. "Where is she?" I asked. Reed pointed toward the pedestrian walkway. A lone figure moved through the mist, Vivian clutching a tablet in one hand, walking toward the center of the bridge. Reeves called for backup, but I was already out of the car running after her. My shoes hit the slick pavement hard each breath, a cloud in the freezing air. "Vivian!" I shouted again. She didn't turn around. The wind whipped her hair, loose strands glowing under the flashing red lights. When I caught up to her, she was standing by the railing, tablet screen flickering with streams of code. She was calm, too calm. "You're too late," she said without looking at me. "It's already done. You'll destroy everything I said. All the families, all the accounts you're erasing people's lives." Vivian turned then, eyes gleaming in the stormlight. "I'm cleansing corruption. You think this system was pure? It was built by men who thought legacy meant ownership. I'm giving it back to no one. That's justice. You stole my father's work, my husband's life. And you call that justice?" She smiled faintly. "Your father understood the cost of control. You never did." "Then explain it to me," I said, taking a cautious step closer. "What does the air key really do?" She hesitated, rain dripping from her lashes. "It's not just a reset code. It's an override. One activation and every system tied to your family's trust collapses, mine included. But it also releases the hidden archives, names, records, transactions, everything the Bureau wants and everything they shouldn't have. So it's a choice," I said quietly. "Expose everyone, or let you win." "Exactly." She looked at me, something almost human flickering behind her composure. "I didn't plan for you to get this far. Maybe you're more like your father than I thought." A gun clicked behind us. "Step away from the railing," Agent Reeves ordered. Her voice was firm, but her stance showed fatigue. She'd been through enough tonight, too. Vivian raised her hands slowly, still holding the tablet. "Agent Reeves," she said with that same infuriating calm, "you're just in time to witness the end of an empire." Reed appeared behind Reeves, his laptop open, his voice urgent. "Claire, the driver, it's syncing with her system. If you trigger the air key now, it'll link to her device automatically." Vivian's eyes flashed. "You wouldn't dare." I took the flash drive from my pocket, reins sliding down my arm. "You're right," I said. "I wouldn't dare." Then I plugged it into her tablet. The screen flared, white code spilling across it like wildfire. Vivian screamed, not in pain but in rage, as the device sparked and went dark. Reed shouted over the noise. "It's working. It's rewriting everything." Vivian lunged for the tablet, but Reeves pulled her back, cuffing her wrists with practiced speed. The storm roared around us, wind tearing at our coats, lights flashing from the Bureau cars closing in. Vivian's voice cut through it all, low and furious. "You think you've won? You just unleashed something you can't control." The tablet screen blinked once more, displaying a single line before shutting down completely. "Archive transfer." "Initiated." Reed froze. "Wait, what?" But before any of us could react, every light on the bridge flickered and went out. The sirens, the engines, even the hum of the street lamps vanished into silence. The city across the river went dark. Vivian laughed softly in the dark. "See, even in defeat, I win." Reeves yanked her upright. You're under arrest for federal crimes. But her words were drowned out by the sound of something distant, an explosion maybe miles away rolling across the water like thunder. The storm had stopped, but the world felt suddenly hollow. I stared at the dead tablet in my hand. The words, "Archive transfer initiated," burned into my mind. Whatever Vivian had started, it wasn't over. It had just changed hands. The city was still dark when the sun came up. Streetlights stood dead, traffic signals blinked uselessly, and the skyline looked like someone had erased it with a single clean stroke. For a moment I wondered if we'd broken the world. Agent Reeves paced the bridge, barking into her radio. "This is Command Unit 1. We've lost power grid synchronization across 3 counties. Repeat, 3 counties. Confirm emergency generators." Her voice cracked through static, then silence. Reed crouched beside a bureau van, the glow of his laptop the only light for miles. "It's not just local," he said quietly. "This is systemic. The blackout's tied to Vivian's transfer." I stood near the railing, staring down at the river. It turned black under the pale dawn. My reflection wavered in the ripples, a woman I barely recognized. "Reed," I said, "tell me this isn't my fault." He hesitated. "You triggered the Air Key, Claire. It was designed to purge the legacy protocol. But Vivian must have built in a failsafe, something that rewired the network instead of destroying it." Reeves joined us, eyes sharp, despite the exhaustion lining her face. "We just got partial grid reports. It's not just Michigan. The outage stretches into Ontario. Banking networks are frozen. Communications down. The Bureau's calling it an infrastructure breach." "Vivian planned this," Reed said, tapping furiously. "She didn't just want to erase her tracks. She wanted to prove she could collapse an entire system with one command. Then we stopped her too late," I whispered. Reeves turned to me. "We have her in custody, but she's not talking. You need to see something." She led me to a Bureau vehicle parked near the base of the bridge. Inside, Vivian sat cuffed, wrapped in a silver emergency blanket. Her expression was calm, detached, almost regal. "Did you really think you could turn it off?" she said when I stepped in. "You can't kill something that's already alive." "What did you do?" I demanded. She smiled faintly. "I set it free." Reeves leaned forward. "You're going to tell us what that means?" Vivian's eyes flicked toward her, then back to me. "The archives you tried to erase, they're not gone. They're decentralized. The Air Key didn't destroy the data, it distributed it. Every ledger, every record, every hidden account now lives on open networks. You didn't stop corruption, Claire. You exposed it." My stomach turned cold. "You're lying. Check your news feeds." "Oh, wait," she said with a smirk. "You can't." Reed's phone buzzed weakly with an emergency alert signal. He glanced at the screen. "She's not lying. Data leaks are already going, public government accounts, offshore transfers, family trusts. They're calling it the Glass Ledger event." Vivian tilted her head, studying my reaction. "Your father would be proud." His work finally did what he intended. It broke the illusion of control. I slammed my hand against the table. "You ruined lives. People will lose everything." "Maybe they deserve to," she said softly. "Maybe you all do." Reeves signaled the guards. "Take her back." As they let her out, she glanced over her shoulder. "It's only just begun." By late morning, we were in the Bureau's downtown field office. The emergency generators buzzed faintly, casting the rooms in flickering yellow light. Agents swarmed like hornets, phones ringing, screens flashing, voices rising. Reed and I were given a temporary briefing room. A digital map on the wall displayed red clusters spreading across the country, each one representing a system breach. "She wasn't exaggerating," he said. "This thing's global. Every encrypted ledger linked to the legacy protocol is dumping its contents online. We're talking trillions in asset data." I sank into the chair. "So what happens now?" Reeves entered, dropping a folder on the table. "Now panic. Half the financial institutions in North America are in crisis mode. The White House just called this an act of cyber terrorism. Vivian's officially classified as a national threat." "And me?" I asked. Reeves met my eyes. "You're a cooperating witness. For now." Her words stung more than they should have. Reed leaned over the map. If the air key redistributed the data instead of deleting it, there might be a way to reverse the process. But I'd need to trace the seed servers. Can you? I asked. Maybe, but it's not just about her code anymore, it's about intent. Vivian used your biometric key to authenticate the final upload. That means the system recognizes you as a co-creator. I froze. So if they can't catch her, they'll come after me. Reeves didn't deny it. That's why you're staying under Bureau protection until this stabilizes. I looked at her voice barely above a whisper. And if it doesn't, Reeves exhaled, then you'll need to disappear. That night I lay off the small cot inside the safe house listening to the generator hum. The blackout outside made everything feel suspended like the world was holding its breath. I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing Vivian's face, her voice echoing in my mind. You can't kill something that's already alive. Around midnight, a knock came at the door. It was Reed holding 2 mugs of coffee. He looked tired but alert eyes reflecting the same haunted awareness I felt. Couldn't sleep either, he asked. Sleep feels like a luxury I don't deserve. He handed me a mug and sat across from me. I traced the seed nodes. My pulse quickened. Already, he nodded. They're not in any country's jurisdiction. The data scattered itself into something called the inheritance net, a closed loop of private servers, each one tethered to encrypted blockchain addresses linked to, well, you. I stared at him. You mean, it's mine in a way. It recognizes your clearance, your DNA markers. You're the fail-safe Claire. The system only responds to you now. I shook my head. I didn't ask for this. He gave a small, weary smile. Legacy rarely asks permission. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The power flickered again, briefly illuminating the room in cold light. Then Reed said quietly, We have 2 choices. We can help the Bureau contain this, or we can finish what Vivian started on our terms. Finish it, he nodded. Use the air key one last time. Not to destroy or expose, but to rebuild. Your father's system was meant to protect people, not control them. We could restore it the way he intended. And what happens if we fail? Then the world burns a little faster, he said. I stared into my coffee steam curling upward like the ghosts of everything we'd lost. Outside the rain started again, soft, insistent, unending. By dawn, I had made my choice. Reed was already at the computer when I walked into the main room. The monitors glowed with lines of code, a pulsing green heartbeat on black screens. He looked up. Are you sure? Yes, I said. We finished it, but not for Vivian. For the truth. He nodded and slid a second keyboard toward me. Then let's bring your father's legacy home. As the first keystrokes echoed through the safe house, the world outside began to flicker, lights returning one district at a time. The blackout was ending. But something told me the real darkness was only beginning. The safe house hummed with static as the servers came to life. The glow from the monitors threw shifting green light across Reed's face, making him look older, more worn. He didn't glance up from the keyboard as he spoke. The air key needs 2 biometric verifications, he said. Yours and your father's. I froze. My father's been dead for 15 years. Reed's fingers never stopped moving. I know. But Vivian must have archived his signature. A digital print voice data, maybe even DNA encoding from his old systems. She was obsessed with continuity. If we can find that pattern, we can reconstruct the key. He pulled up a folder labeled Archive/Trace. Thousands of file paths scrolled past in white code. The machine's fans whined louder as if straining under the weight of memory. Your father wasn't just a financial engineer, Reed continued. He was a systems architect. He built self-learning protocols, ones that could evolve. That's what the Bureau never understood. His work wasn't static, it was alive. Alive. The word echoed through me. I stepped closer, watching the fragments of code pour down the screen, numbers, letters, phrases that seemed half familiar, like the ghost of handwriting you've seen before. Reed isolated a block of text and magnified it. There, he said softly, Signature hash. It's his. He clicked once and a waveform appeared on the side monitor. My breath caught. The sound was faint, distorted by time, but unmistakable. My father's voice. If you're hearing this, the recording said, then someone has breached the core. The system is not property. It is inheritance. Protect it, even from those who bear your name. The message ended abruptly, but the silence that followed felt charged, sacred. Reed leaned back. He encoded it into the core sequence. The system recognizes his voice as authorization. So what now? Now we pair it with yours. He placed a small scanner on the desk. Fingerprint and vocal confirmation. Once both keys align, we'll gain root access. I hesitated. And then we decide what the world remembers. I pressed my thumb against the scanner. The device hummed its light, warming my skin. Voice phrase, Reed prompted. I took a breath. Activate legacy. The room filled with a low vibration like the sound of the earth shifting. The monitors flickered, then displayed a single phrase, access granted, primary line restored. Reed exhaled slowly. It worked. But before we could react, another message appeared beneath it, smaller, almost hidden. Secondary protocol detected. Executing inheritance mirror. Reed's head snapped up. No, she built a twin system. What does that mean? It means every time we access the core, it creates a reflection, a backup somewhere else. If Vivian's still alive, she'll know exactly what we're doing. Can we stop it? Not without losing everything we've unlocked. A faint vibration ran through the floor. Somewhere outside, a car engine idled. The hum grew louder, closer. Reed moved to the window and peered through the blinds. We've got company. Bureau. He shook his head. Private convoy. Black sedans. No markings. The lights flickered again, briefly plunging us into darkness. When they came back, the system console displayed a new line, connection request, VL. Vivian Langford. My pulse quickened. She's in. Reed's fingers flew across the keyboard. She's hijacked the signal. She's trying to overwrite your clearance. The speakers crackled, then her voice filled the room, cold, disembodied, and alive. Claire Vivian said, "You never should have touched the code." I stepped closer to the mic. You said you wanted freedom. You got it. The system's yours to destroy. What are you waiting for? Her tone was smooth, almost amused. Destruction was never the goal. Creation is. You still don't see it, do you? The world's order was built on lies, inheritance, power control. Your father tried to change that. I'm just finishing what he started. You twisted his work, I shouted. He wanted protection, not chaos. Vivian laughed softly. Protection for who? The privileged. The families who hoarded wealth for generations, while others starved, no Claire. The legacy protocol will balance everything. The archives are now public domain. Every hidden fortune, every buried name open for all. Reed muttered. She's turning it into a revolution. Or a weapon, I said. Depends who holds it. Vivian's voice sharpened. You can't stop the mirror, Claire. But you can choose which reflection survives. Surrender your access and I'll spare you the fallout. Refuse and you'll watch the world burn under your name. The feed cut abruptly. Reed slammed his fist against the table. She's routing through offshore servers, Singapore, Zurich, Buenos Aires. We can't trace her fast enough. I stared at the screen, the blinking cursor waiting for command input. If she wants control, she'll need full biometric confirmation. Reed turned. Meaning she still needs me. I typed quickly, overriding the secondary prompt. If she's going to use my clearance, I'll give her one. Reed looked alarmed. What are you doing, baiting her? I entered a new command, activate testament protocol. Location trace enabled. The console paused, then flashed a warning. Manual activation required verbal confirmation pending. Claire Reed said sharply. If you trigger that without backup, I'm not waiting for another chance. I leaned toward the microphone. Confirm activation. The entire system flared to life screens cascading with mirrored data. Reed swore under his breath. She's responding. She's logging in. On the main monitor, a live feed appeared, grainy, flickering, but clear enough. Vivian stood in a dimly lit warehouse surrounded by servers. Her face was pale, eyes hollow. So predictable, she said. You just had to look me in the eye before the end. This isn't the end, I said. It's the reckoning. She smiled faintly. Then let it be mutual. The screens synchronized two interfaces merging into one. The air key pulsed between us, a shared heartbeat made of code. Reed shouted, "She's trying to merge your systems. If she succeeds, she'll take both keys. Then we finish this now," I said. Vivian raised her hand toward her own terminal. "Say goodbye, Claire." "Goodbye, Vivian," I whispered. Then I entered the final command my father had hidden in the system, execute parity restore. The monitors flared white. A deafening tone filled the room. Reed shouted something I couldn't hear. For a second, everything froze, code suspended in perfect symmetry. Two systems mirrored, balanced. Then the image of Vivian flickered once, twice, and vanished. The lights returned slowly. The air felt thinner, lighter. Reed's voice was hoarse. "What did you do?" I stared at the screen. "I restored balance. I split the system." "Split one half remains public," I said. "The other, my father's original framework, is sealed under new access. No one can own it. Not Vivian. Not the Bureau. Not me." Reed sank into the chair, half laughing, half in awe. "You just rewrote global inheritance law." Outside, the sirens were closer now, the Bureau maybe, or someone else. I glanced at the clock. "We don't have long." Reed looked at me, eyes full of understanding. "Where will you go?" I smiled faintly. "Somewhere the past can't find me." The console beeped one last time. A single message appeared, "Legacy restored," and for the first time in years, I felt like I could finally breathe. The morning after the parity restore command, the world woke up to chaos and silence. No one knew what had happened, not really. News outlets called it the reset dawn. Financial experts called it a systemic anomaly, and politicians blamed foreign cyber interference. But those who understood, the ones who had built their empires on shadowed money and invisible networks, knew the truth. Their kingdoms had collapsed overnight. Reed and I were ghosts watching history reformat itself from a safe house on the outskirts of Chicago. The news ticker scrolled endlessly on the only working TV in the room: global systems under review, federal investigations, ongoing legacy, data leak confirmed. He stood by the window, arms crossed, his eyes scanning the distant skyline where the lights still flickered irregularly. "You know what this means, don't you?" he said finally. "You're going to be the face of this whether you want it or not. The whistleblower, the hacker, the heir, it doesn't matter what word they choose. You're the headline." I didn't answer right away. My phone buzzed on the table, another call from Agent Reeves. I'd let it ring out. Again. "I didn't do this for attention," I said. Reed turned, exhaustion etched into every movement. "You did it because someone had to. But they won't care about that. They'll call you the woman who broke the world to make it fair." I looked at the flickering screen where an anchor was reading names of companies that had declared insolvency overnight. Entire dynasties: Langford Financial, Worthington Group, Helios Assets, all exposed by the mirrored data Vivian had unleashed before I severed the core. Each collapse was a name I recognized from my father's circle. His rivals, his investors, his enemies. "Maybe that's the point," I said softly. "Legacy shouldn't be untouchable." Reed smiled faintly. "Careful. That sounds like something Vivian would say." By mid-afternoon, the Bureau arrived. Black SUVs lined the street, the quiet kind of arrival that announced power without saying it. Agent Reeves entered first, her expression unreadable beneath the weight of sleepless hours. She closed the door behind her and didn't speak until she'd set her badge on the table. "I told you to stay put," she said finally. "I did," I replied. "I just didn't stay silent." Reed tried to lighten the tension. "You'll be happy to know she saved half the global economy." Reeves shot him a look that could have cut glass. "And exposed the other half." She turned to me. "You realize what you did, right? That command you executed, parity restored, didn't just split the system. It rewrote jurisdiction. Every international database is now cross-referenced through an independent network no one controls. Governments can't access what they used to. The Bureau's locked out of its own archives. I met her gaze steadily. Good. Then maybe it won't be abused anymore. Her jaw tightened, but there was something else behind her anger, a flicker of reluctant respect. Vivian Langford's body was recovered this morning, she said. Or what was left of her data cell. The warehouse burned down 2 hours after your system split. No survivors. I didn't flinch. She never planned to survive it. She just wanted to leave her mark. She did, Reeves said. The world's going to be cleaning up her mark for the next 50 years. Reed gestured toward the monitors where a map of global data flow still pulsed softly. And her system's not dead. It's stabilizing, learning, adapting. It's almost self-governing now. Reeves looked between us. The Bureau's forming a task force. They want you both in D.C. by morning. Voluntarily if possible. And if not, I asked. She didn't answer, but her silence said enough. That night I stood on the rooftop of the safe house, watching the city blink back to life. It wasn't uniform, whole neighborhoods still dark, others blazing bright, but it was something. Reed joined me, holding 2 paper cups of coffee. He handed one over. You're thinking about disappearing, aren't you? I didn't deny it. I can't go to D.C. I can't become part of the system I just dismantled. He took a sip, considering. You could go back to your father's cabin. It's under Bureau watch now, but if anyone could slip through, I'm not running, I said quietly. I'm just choosing where to stand. He studied me, searching for something in my face. You still believe you can fix this, don't you? Not fix, I said. But maybe redefine. He smiled faintly. You sound more like a leader than a fugitive. The wind picked up, carrying the faint hum of a city trying to remember itself. I think about Vivian sometimes, I said after a while. What made her cross that line? Whether she really believed she was saving people. She believed in control, Reed said. And you believe in release. That's the difference. I nodded slowly. Maybe. But control and release, they're both forms of faith. We stood in silence for a long time. Below us, a siren wailed, faintly distant but constant. Just before dawn, I woke to the sound of Reeves's voice downstairs. Her tone was low, urgent. She's not here, she was saying. How long ago? Reed's reply came quiet but tense. An hour, maybe less. She left a note. I stood in the doorway. Reeves turned toward me, eyes narrowing. Tell me this isn't what I think it is. I handed her the folded note I'd written before sunrise. She read it silently, her jaw tightening as she reached the last line. I didn't build the system. I just reset it. Now it's time to live outside it. Reed met my eyes, the faintest ghost of a smile playing at his lips. Do you really think they'll let you walk away? Reeves asked. I don't think they can stop me, I said. Her expression softened just slightly. You're not wrong. Take care of him, I said, nodding toward Reed. He's the one who'll make sure it stays balanced. Reeves sighed. You realize what you've become now, don't you? A symbol. People will call you everything from a criminal to a savior. Symbols fade, I said. Legacies don't. And with that, I stepped out into the pale morning light. The train station was almost empty. Most people were still asleep or pretending to be. I bought a one-way ticket to the coast under a name that wasn't mine. As the train pulled away from the platform, I looked out the window. The skyline of Chicago receded slowly, a fading constellation of glass and steel. Somewhere out there, the world was rebuilding itself. Systems rebooting, truths surfacing, families redefining what inheritance meant. My phone buzzed once, a message from an unknown number. No words, just a single symbol. I smiled. Reed's way of saying goodbye. As the train curved along the lake, the rising sun reflected off the water in bands of gold and white. For the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. The world hadn't ended. It had just begun again on different terms. And this time, I wasn't anyone's heir. I was free. The coast felt like another planet. The world inland was still reeling from the reset, drowning in hearings, audits, and televised outrage. But here on the edge of the Atlantic, life moved in slow tides. The old fishing town where I'd rented a cabin didn't have the internet yet, not really. The locals still used landlines and handwritten ledgers. It was the perfect kind of invisibility. I spent my mornings walking along the dunes, my afternoons writing reports no one would ever read, and my nights trying not to think about the legacy I'd rewritten. The world was supposedly rebuilding itself, but I could feel something darker humming beneath the surface, a quiet war between those who'd lost everything and those determined to rebuild the illusion of order. The first sign that I hadn't escaped came on a Tuesday. I was in the market buying bread when I saw a familiar face on the newspaper rack. Not Vivian, not Reed, me. A photo taken from 6 years ago, back when I was still married to Henry, and smiled in public. The headline read, "The Woman Who Broke the Banks, Hero or Traitor?" My stomach turned. The story had finally reached the tabloids. Mrs. Cranston, the baker's wife, noticed my glance. "Terrible business, isn't it?" she said, shaking her head. "Imagine bringing down the whole system like that. But she doesn't look the type, does she? Too polite." I forced a small smile. "Looks can be deceiving." She nodded thoughtfully. "Ain't that the truth?" That night I burned the paper in the stove and watched the flames curl around my old life. By the end of the week, the Bureau had found me, or at least someone had. It started with a letter postmarked from Washington, but with no sender. Inside was a single phrase printed in typewriter ink. "They're rewriting history again. Don't let them." No signature. But I recognized the typeface. It was the one Reed used for field reports. I packed before sunrise, though I didn't know where I was going. A decade of being underestimated had taught me one thing: when the story starts to move faster than the truth, someone is pulling the strings. I drove inland, avoiding highways, stopping only for gas and bad coffee. At a rest stop outside Philadelphia, I turned on a payphone, an antique relic that still worked if you fed it enough quarters, and dialed the one number I still remembered by heart. It rang 4 times before a familiar voice answered. Claire Reed said quietly, "You shouldn't be calling this line. Then you shouldn't have mailed me that letter I shot back." Silence. Then a sigh. "You saw it. I burned it. What's happening, Reed?" He hesitated. "The Bureau's been split down the middle. Reeves is holding the line, but the higher-ups want control of the legacy network. They're calling it Project Restoration." I felt the cold spread through me. "They're trying to rebuild it." "Not rebuild," he said. "Weaponize. They've figured out how to manipulate the data mirrors you created. They can alter records, erase transactions, even rewrite ownership. The same control your father's system was designed to prevent." I closed my eyes, gripping the phone booth's edge. How long they've already started. The line went quiet for a long time before I spoke again. "Tell me what I need to do." Reed exhaled. "You need to find the source node, the one physical server that still recognizes your access as primary. It's somewhere in the old coastal data tunnels. Before the reset, your father's team used them as an off-grid archive." I frowned. "You mean the Nova archives?" "Exactly. They were decommissioned 20 years ago. But Reeves believes one of them was reactivated last month off the Bureau's books. If you reach it first, you can lock the system for good. And if I don't," he didn't answer, but I could hear it in his breathing. "The Bureau wouldn't just reclaim control, they'd rewrite everything again." 2 days later, I reached the Nova compound. It sat on the edge of a cliff surrounded by rusting chain-link fences and the ghostly hum of sea wind through broken vents. The air smelled like salt and iron. Inside the place looked like time had stopped mid-command. Rows of dormant servers lined the walls, their indicator lights long dead. But beneath the silence, I could sense the pulse of something still awake, an echo buried deep inside. I moved through the tunnels with a flashlight, my footsteps whispering against the concrete. Then halfway down the 3rd corridor, I found it a single terminal still running, its faint blue glow cutting through the dark. The screen flickered, then displayed a single line of text. "Welcome back. Claire." My pulse spiked. "Reed," I whispered into the silence, but the voice that answered wasn't his. Miss Whitmore said Agent Reeves's unmistakable voice filtered through the terminal speakers. "You're walking into classified territory." I froze. "You're tracking me?" "Not exactly," she said. "We've been monitoring network fluctuations since the reset. When your credentials came online again, we knew where you'd go." "You're trying to take it back," I said. "You want control." Her voice softened. "Control isn't the enemy, Claire. Chaos is. You split the world in half. Someone has to keep it from tearing itself apart. By rebuilding the very thing that caused it, by stabilizing it," she countered. "The parity system's collapsing without oversight. People are losing home savings and access to medicine. You wanted justice, but you gave them anarchy." I looked around the shadowed hall at the servers thrumming faintly like distant thunder. "You're lying." "I'm offering balance," Reeves said quietly. "You started something you can't finish alone. Let us help." "Help?" I laughed bitterly. "That's what Vivian said before she nearly burned the world." "Vivian was chaotic," Reeves said. "You're the reason. We need that balance." The terminal flickered again, and another voice joined the feed, one I hadn't expected. "Claire." It was Reed. My throat tightened. "You're with her." "She's right," he said. "The system's decaying. If you don't let us patch it, the network will crash completely. We're talking total data collapse, medical financial infrastructure. Civilization level." I stepped back, shaking my head. "You both sound like my father before he sold his soul to the board." "Then don't make this mistake," Reed said gently. "Don't let pride destroy the world you tried to save." I stared at the terminal, my reflection ghosted across the glass. "If I give you access, it'll never end. There'll always be another project, another restoration. The world will go back to being owned." "Then what's your solution?" Reeves demanded. I typed a command, slowly, the letters forming under my trembling hands. "Execute. Equalize." Reed's voice sharpened. "Claire, wait. What is that?" "It's the final safeguard," I said. "My father's last instruction is buried in the archive." Reeves shouted something, but the speakers cracked with static. The servers around me began to hum louder, their lights blinking to life one by one. The low hum built into a deep, resonating thrum that shook the concrete floor beneath my feet. A wave of heat radiated from the glowing screens as if the very air was being rewritten. The lights on the dormant servers flared to an impossible brightness, a network of forgotten power surging into a single unified pulse. Equalize process initiated. Redistribution in progress. "What did you do?" Reed's voice came through faintly. "I leveled it," I said. "No more owners. No more heirs. The data belongs to everyone now." "Claire, you've just—" The line was cut out. The air inside the archive thickened with heat and light. I backed toward the exit as the floor began to vibrate beneath my feet. Outside, the wind howled across the cliff. The ocean churned violently below, waves colliding against stone like something ancient and angry had been freed. I didn't know if I'd saved the world or doomed it again. But as I watched the glow spread through the glass windows of the compound, lighting up the horizon like a sunrise reborn, I whispered the only truth I had left. Balance doesn't need permission. When the light faded, the world was quiet again. The air smelled of salt and ozone, the sky a bruised purple that bled into dawn. I stood on the cliff above the Nova compound, my hands trembling from exhaustion. Behind me, the old servers groaned one final time before falling still. The Equalize protocol had run its course. There was no undoing it now. For a long moment, I simply watched the horizon. Waves rolled against the rocks, below steady and unbothered, as if nothing extraordinary had just happened, no systems rewritten, no dynasties erased. Then my phone buzzed. A single bar of reception. One message from Reed. It worked. Everywhere. I sank to my knees in the grass, the wind whipping through my hair, and for the first time in months I let myself breathe. The world reacted within hours. By mid-morning, every screen, every newsfeed, every government server displayed the same message: data networks unified. Ownership neutralized. Global equalization complete. The Equalize protocol had stripped the world bare. Hidden fortunes surfaced, debts were recalculated, locked assets unlocked. No one could own more than the system allowed, no shell companies, no shadow accounts, no secret legacies. Everything was visible. And chaos, of course, followed. Markets froze. Governments called emergency meetings. The Bureau went dark, its public statements replaced with a single sterile phrase, "under review." But for ordinary people, the ones whose lives had been quietly suffocated by rules they didn't write, it was liberation. Rent debts disappeared overnight. Stolen pensions reappeared. Families who'd been erased by loopholes suddenly found their names restored on deeds, inheritances, and wills. Justice had arrived not as a courtroom verdict but as raw code. Reed found me 2 days later in a diner off Highway 23. I was sitting alone at the counter staring at a mug of untouched coffee when he slid onto the stool beside me. "You made quite an entrance," he said quietly. "I didn't mean to," I replied. "I just followed through." He gave a small, tired smile. "You realize they'll come for you. The Bureau, the corporations, maybe even foreign agencies. You just rewrote human civilization without permission." I met his eyes. It was never theirs to own. He studied me for a long time before reaching into his coat pocket. "Reeves wanted me to give you this." He slid a small flash drive across the counter. "What is it?" I asked. "The last encrypted file your father ever wrote," he said. "Reeves decrypted it this morning. She didn't open it, said it wasn't hers to read." My throat tightened. "You think it's another protocol?" Reed shrugged. "Or maybe it's just a goodbye." I hesitated, then plugged it into my laptop. The screen flickered once, twice, then filled with my father's handwriting. To my daughter it began. "If you're reading this, it means my work has outlived me, as all mistakes do. I built systems to preserve order, but I forgot that order without empathy becomes tyranny. If you've reached this point, then you've already done what I could not reset the balance. You didn't inherit my power. You inherited my conscience. Use it well, and then let it go." The message ended with a final line barely visible. "Legacy isn't what we leave behind. It's what we choose to stop carrying." I stared at the words until they blurred. When I looked up, Reed was watching me. "What are you going to do?" "Now." I closed the laptop. "Disappear. For real this time." He nodded slowly. "You've earned it?" I smiled faintly. "And you?" He chuckled under his breath. "Someone's got to explain to the world why the rules just changed." I reached out and took his hand. "Thank you, Reed, for believing in me even when you shouldn't have." He squeezed gently. "You were never the villain they painted you to be." By evening, I was gone. I left the car in a truck stop lot, walked to the nearest bus terminal, and bought a one-way ticket west. No credit card, no phone, no trace. As the bus rolled through miles of fading farmland, I watched the world slowly adjusting to its new reality. People on sidewalks reading headlines aloud, laughing, crying, calling friends. The air felt lighter, charged with the strange electricity of possibility. At one stop, a man across the aisle glanced at me and said, "Crazy times, huh?" I smiled. "The best kind." He grinned back. "Whoever did it, this equalized thing, they might have saved us." I turned to the window, hiding my expression. Maybe. 3 months later, I was living under a new name in a small coastal town north of Mendocino. I rented a tiny cottage overlooking the cliffs, tended a garden, and worked part-time at the local library. No one here knew who I was. To them, I was just Claire Walker, the quiet woman who preferred old books to conversation. Sometimes I'd catch headlines in passing debates in Congress about digital sovereignty, global initiatives for transparent trade, community networks sharing wealth directly. The world wasn't perfect. Maybe it never would be, but it was fairer than before. And that was enough. One evening, as the sun sank into the ocean, a letter arrived in my mailbox. No return address. Just a seal stamped in blue ink. Inside was a single note written in neat, familiar handwriting, fonts restored. "The Bureau stands down. R." I smiled. Reed always knew how to say everything in as few words as possible. I folded the letter carefully, placed it inside one of my father's old notebooks, and walked out to the edge of the cliff. The sea below roared with quiet power, endless and unbroken. I thought of all the stories that had led me here, of my father, of Vivian of Owen, and the Whitmore name I no longer carried. Every betrayal, every scar, every choice had built this moment. Legacy wasn't a burden anymore. It was a release. I whispered into the wind, "It's done." And the ocean, ever patient, seemed to whisper back, finally. When the first stars appeared, I turned back toward the cottage, where the warm glow of the lamp spilled through the windows. The world outside was still healing, still learning what balance meant, but for the first time in years, I didn't feel responsible for it. I was just part of it. A neighbor's dog barked in the distance. Gulls cried over the surf, and the night settled soft and whole around me. Tomorrow I'd wake up, make coffee, tend my garden, maybe read something ordinary and forgettable. And that, I decided, was the real victory. I had rewritten history not for glory, not for revenge, but for peace, and peace at last had come home. If this story reminded you that balance sometimes demands courage, leave a thought below. Tell me, what would you have done if the world's legacy rested in your hands? And don't forget, stories like these survive because of you. Stay with me for the next one. The reckoning never truly ends.